On behalf of the Jesuit School Network's conference office, welcome to our latest virtual Ignatian inquiry session. The JSN, as you know, seeks to be a supportive resource to our member schools. And this virtual session is designed to be just that, a space to listen, to learn, and to engage with one another. We are eager to encourage a spirit of inquiry across the many layers of our work in Jesuit education, and we envision our particular brand of Ignatian inquiry to be the art of inquiry as seen through our Ignatian lens, asking questions and exploring issues that matter in our schools through the frame of our shared Jesuit mission. For those of you I do not know, I am Kristen Ross-Cully with the JSN's conference office, where I serve as Director of Inquiry and New Ventures. And I'd like to thank my colleague here on the call, Kristen Smith, who leads all things communications for us and will help ensure that we all enjoy a smooth Zoom session this afternoon. If we might begin, as we always do, with a prayer. Just take a moment on this Tuesday afternoon to quiet ourselves and to be reminded that in being together this afternoon, even virtually, that we are in the presence of God. In the name of the Father and Son and Holy Spirit. In this century, and in any century, our deepest hope, our most tender prayer, is that we learn to listen. May we listen to one another in openness and mercy. May we listen to plants and animals in wonder and respect. May we listen to our own hearts in love and forgiveness. May we listen to God in quietness and awe. And in this listening, which is boundless in its beauty, may we find the wisdom to cooperate with a healing spirit, a divine spirit, who beckons us into peace and community and creativity. We do not ask for a perfect world, but we do ask for a better world, and we ask for deep listening. Saint Ignatius of Loyola, pray for us. Amen. So I would like to welcome you formally to our Ignatian Inquiry session entitled this afternoon, Reimagining the Role of a Teacher with Adaptability and Purpose, Reflections from a Faculty Member, Energized by AI. The future is changing in front of us. Where will our classrooms be in 1 year? The evolution of artificial intelligence has the potential to transform education, influencing the role of educators in ways big and small. Our charge as educators is to accompany students in their learning journey. How do we best do this in a constantly changing landscape? This session will explore the efforts of Spencer Wagner, a teacher at Regis Jesuit High School in Colorado, who has worked extensively on adapting to AI in his role as a teacher and in working with his students as well as his faculty colleagues. I learned about the work that our presenter is doing with artificial intelligence and learning at Regis Jesuit High School last year, right around this time of year when ChatGPT was causing a stir. I heard about a teacher at RJ who was inspiring the faculty and working with them as the world was changing in and around their classrooms. We invited him to present to our annual JSN's Principals Gathering just last week, and we're happy to share his work around this important topic with the wider network here today. Spencer Wagner embarked on his educational journey as a high school field hockey coach nearly 25 years ago. A graduate of the University of Denver, he holds a bachelor's degree in mathematics, a minor in computer science, and a master's degree in education. For the last 15 years, he's been an integral part of Regis Jesuit High School, instructing in mathematics and computer science while also coaching field hockey. Recently, he authored The Rise of the Teacher Coach, Adapting AI to the Classroom, a visionary work on the evolution of secondary education. Building on this, he has spearheaded school-wide efforts to adapt to rapidly changing technologies and collaborated with administrators to refine educational strategies, all in the hopes of better preparing our teachers to accompany students on their lifelong learning journeys. So it's my pleasure to turn this session over to Spencer.
Thank you very much, Kristen. Can you just confirm that everything looks like it should?
It does. Looks great.
Okay, then. Well, I will be jumping right into adaptability and purpose in high school education and my take on it, the research I've done so far, and where I think it's headed in the near future. We'll have a little time for Q&A at the end, but I have a lot of slides to get through, so let's get started. There we go. The first thing I'd like to say is that this is a path that I by no means have traveled before. I'm basically making it up as I go along, as I think most of us feel we are, as technology is rapidly changing. There are way too many possible outcomes to predict what the next year will look like, or even maybe the next 3 months. But I'd like to think that we can find those paths by walking into them. Maybe not quite move fast and break things style, but certainly move more quickly than we have been forced to in the past. My origins with all of this comes through field hockey, and I started our Regis Jesuit field hockey program about 15 years ago. And it took a while before our team was what I considered a successful program to my standards. And that took about a decade of trial and error. But one of the things that it took more than others is that I required really good assistant coaches to come alongside me at one point and give me a chance to focus on reconfiguring the program towards the vision that I had for it. And this took about 5 years of the same 3 excellent assistants helping me out through season, allowing me to focus on creating a program around adaptability, an environment where I was no longer training specific skills per se in our practice sessions, but I was creating games and challenges for our team to try and to adapt to and to find solutions to. And then I would challenge them again and I'd change it. And we would just continuously go through this process of learning to read the situation on the field and adapt to it on the fly. And what this led to was a team that I could trust in the playoffs, wouldn't need my direct coaching. They wouldn't need to hear my voice. They would know how to make the right decisions on the field. Everything, of course, that I would do on the field, I started to do in the classroom as well, and vice versa. And I got a lot of inspiration from that. And so after that 10-year period, we ran into 5 years of great success in my mind, as we hit the championship game multiple times in a row. And I really felt like I had come up with a program that was repeatable and trainable and reproducible. And that was proven by year after year of successful teams coming out of it. So that's where I began this idea. And this fall, when I started to think about how can I reimagine a classroom environment in the same way, I heavily relied on my coaching experience to do that. And it was through this idea of adaptability, of jumping from challenge to challenge and teaching my students how to use the tools that they had available to solve the problems that were in front of them. I often equate it to feeling like a surfer, just simply jumping from wave to wave as the next one launches. And these waves have been launching at a more rapid pace as the year goes by. But what it's required from me is the exact thing that I had in the coaching world, which is 3 excellent interns. And those interns have been with me since about March of this year. And it's freed up about 90% of the tasks that I have to do in the classroom on a day-to-day basis. And when that is gone, it gives me the freedom to reimagine and to focus all of my brain power, my thought, my energy on the other 10%, which I think to be the most important 10% of the work that I'm doing, which is designing the class, focusing on the students, listening, getting feedback, imagining, reimagining. And that's what my days have turned into over the course of the last year, ever since we started trying ChatGPT in our classroom for the first time back in about November of last year, when we first had it write a poem for AP Computer Science. I'm sure many of you have similar stories. So these are my interns in the classroom. And of course, they're AI agents. Each one is built by a different company. Claude is from Anthropic, ChatGPT is from OpenAI, and Bard is from Google. There's a couple of other tools that I've used throughout the year, and those are linked over on the side, but there's more tools that come and go that I could possibly list. These have been the main three. I usually have all three of these open on my screen at all times of the day, and I'm constantly using them for optimizing my class. So what do I do with them? Well, first and foremost, I teach the kids how to use them. Because when the kids have access to AI tools, then they can move at their own pace. They aren't restricted by my pacing anymore. They can get custom tailored content. They can inquire as to their strengths, their weaknesses, and get responses that are personalized to them. I use it to create quizzes. I use it to create material, to create infographics, to create games. And through all of this, the interns just keep going. They never tire. They don't get frustrated. Endless repetitions without judgment. This is actually really important to the kids. The kids love to ask a question to someone they know will not get impatient, upset, or judge them for asking. So this is what I've used my 3 interns to do. And it's redesigned how my classes look. Before we go into that, though, I want to talk just a little bit about generative AI, because maybe you're not as familiar with it as some of your other colleagues, and I certainly doubt that you're as familiar with it as I am. AI is known for 3 main things. One is that it is adaptive to the person who is using it. It molds itself to you. The more specific, the more customized you can possibly make it, the more useful it is going to be to you. As a side note, I did use it to create 90% of this presentation, the artwork, the text, and even the introduction that Christian read a moment ago. So it's constantly evolving. It is new. Every 3 months or so, we are seeing just incredible technology that was unheard of even 2 years ago. We couldn't have imagined it doing some of these things that it's doing. And the last thing is that it's predictive. It is designed such that it gives you the probabilistic answer you're looking for, not necessarily the right answer, as if there were a right or wrong answer. It gives you what it thinks is probably what you want to hear most. And that means no 2 answers are ever going to be the same. Few things it is not. Number one, and most of you are quick to point this out, or maybe you already noticed the text to the left on the screen, it is not infallible. It produces what it thinks is correct, but if 90% of the time it should look one way and 10% of the time it looks a different way, then you're going to get that other 10% of the time, so 1 out of 10 times. And the newest technology, of course, will be full of bugs and untested features. The image generation is far superior to what it was a year ago. And even so, its text generation still has a few hiccups, as you might notice there. It is not intuitive. It jumps into patterns on the data, but it doesn't understand what humans are necessarily looking for to get out of it. So you have to learn to engineer it. It's called prompt engineering. The more you practice that skill, the better and the quicker you get to your responses and your outcomes. And lastly, and I already mentioned this, it's not uniform. I see this as a feature, not a bug. I love that I can ask 3 different interns 3 different questions and get 3 different answers, and I get to pick which one is most useful to me. That keeps the human in the driving seat, so to speak. I think it's best used when you get multiple answers to the same question, and then you get to scroll through them and differentiate. And that's what I encourage my students to do also. Speaking of, this power of this tool was first made apparent to me when I asked a question in my computer science principles class. This is an AP course, and I ask the same question every year on the first unit test, and it is about a concept called overflow errors in computer science. And I'm not going to bore you with the details an overflow error is, but I will tell you that it used to be explained easily as what would happen to, say, your car odometer when it went over the threshold of how many miles it could hold on the car. And you would imagine it just rolling over and ticking up and the next number would restart at 0 again because it would run out of room to store any more miles on it. This was an example that I had been giving, was in my slides, and nobody really had a better way of explaining it. And I'd given this same example multiple years in my class, and the kids routinely didn't understand it, mostly because I think students no longer drive cars with manual odometers. But what they do know quite a lot about is the game of Fortnite, which recently, about 2 weeks ago, released a new season update. Many of your students probably talked about it excitedly through their classes, or just didn't show up to class so they could go play it. Or the new Barbie movie, which has gotten people talking about what is a 50-year-old toy again, as though it were invented yesterday. And so I have 2 students in my class who decided they were going to ask for an explanation of an overflow error, one using Fortnite and the other using Barbie. They both laughed at me as if that was just too silly to possibly be of any use. And I stopped the class so that they could read out loud the explanations that were given. These are not the explanations that the students were given, of course. The no 2 outcomes are the same, but I did ask the same question and got pretty much the same response. Fortnite, it uses an example of a backpack filling it to overload capacity and having to remove an item if you want to put another one in. You basically can't keep forcing items in when there's no more space. With Barbie, it uses cups of tea. The exact customization of the answer is less important than the fact that you can personalize any concept you can imagine that's complex. You can personalize and simplify and connect to something you're already an expert in. And that massively increases the learning capabilities for your brain to pick up on new ideas by simply tying them to what's already in your memory. We don't have time for this right now, but if you're watching this on record, you could pause this at this moment and you could ask Chat or Claude or any of your AI tools to explain something that you know really well in terms of something else that you know really well. For example, I could explain a computer science concept in terms of field hockey, or you could explain some large language model learning in terms of fishing, or whatever it is that 2 things you know really well, or one thing that's super complex. You can just ask it to explain it in terms of something else, and it simplifies it to the point where it allows your brain to access it quickly. My students were thrilled by this. It took something that used to take us 3 weeks of repeatedly going back to and them not remembering, and it whittled it down to about 5 seconds for them to really grasp the concept and move on. And that's what I saw in my classes. So I took this personalized learning idea for my students, and I also apply it as a teacher to my classes. I like to utilize the AI tools in a way that works much as a large funnel. So language models are excellent at taking things broadly and generally, and what is the most probabilistic answer you're looking for, and then with user prompting, slowly funnel that down. So my recommendation for my teachers and my students is to start general. Pick something broad. It doesn't really matter. We in our computer science class, the seniors are studying Hamlet right now. So recently we did this in our class. I said, give me the core teaching concepts of Hamlet, and we plugged it in there. And you can see here, we've got a couple of options. It cuts off, but it usually gives about 10 answer choices. And the first one up there is understanding Shakespearean language. And that's one of the tricky things about Hamlet. So from general, you can funnel it down specifically. And in this case, give me an outline for number 1, which was the previous one in the chat chain. It remembers what you're talking about. Language models have a limited memory, though they're getting longer every day. And I said, give me an outline for number 1 for an 11th grade English class on a block schedule with no time for homework. And it gives me a bunch of ideas. I, of course, don't have to use all of these ideas. I only need really 1 good idea out of these. And so if it gives me 10 bad ideas, generally speaking, one of those is something I've never considered, nor would I have ever considered. And it really benefits you to read through quickly all 10 and then hone in on one of them that you think actually is promising. So I take a look at the general, I zoom in, as I say, on the specific, and this one is outlining Shakespearean language. So somewhere down there, it mentioned how part of this unit's activities could be creating memes using ideas from Hamlet. The kids love memes, it's popular, it's relevant. And I said, oh, that's great. Let's ideate on this. Ideate being my favorite word of the year, perhaps of all time. And I ask it to generate memes based on this unit. What ideas can you give me? It doesn't really matter. It's going to give you 10 ideas. You pick one that you find exciting, fun, creative, whatever it may be. So my recommendation with this technology and any new technology is have fun with it first. Make poems, make memes, make stories, do whatever you possibly can think of, because that rapidly brings you to a point of feeling competent with the software and how to interact with it. And then when you do have more complex ideas, you can know how to hone in on those. So all of this prompting took us about 30 seconds in class live. And the fourth thing is we started to create. We said, okay, using DALL-E 3, which is an image creator now built into ChatGPT 4, which is the paid version, go ahead and make me some images based on that idea. And it gave me these two images. And I said, oh, wow, yeah, that's kind of sums it up pretty well how senior might look at reading Hamlet for the first time if they've never met Elizabethan English. That would be kind of funny. For them to put that. You might see this on TikTok or wherever they post their memes these days. It took about 4 prompts to get here, but we've taken something that I've never taught Hamlet before. I'm not an English teacher, but I have students who are looking for some assistance in their English class, and they wanted to know how could AI tools help me with this. I said, well, here's a couple of memes that might help break down bigger concepts. Of course, you would take this and pick whatever complex idea you're struggling with in your class and do it there. After we got to this point, we took it one step further, because 2 weeks ago, they allowed you now to create your own GPT chatbots within the paid version of GPT-4. And so we said, great, let's create Prince Hamlet, the chatbot. So we uploaded the entirety of Hamlet. We said, use this to create a character we can talk to and have direct conversations with. And so we create Prince Hamlet. Ah, the keen observation thou dost make. Indeed, my spirit is oft like a tempest, roiled and tumultuous. In this court of Denmark, where shadows whisper and loyalty shift like sands. I don't know that I would enjoy talking to Hamlet in Old English, but one of the features of our chatbot is we said, switch to modern English at any point if we ask you to. And so now we have a version of Hamlet we can ask direct questions to in modern English, or we can start to have a conversation with him in Shakespearean English, which would practically make me more comfortable speaking and reading Shakespearean English if I'm constantly having a conversation with someone who only speaks in that. So this is just a fun way that we could start to ask him questions. They had all these questions from the book they wanted to ask his opinion on or his answer to, and he was willing to go for it, reminding us regularly that he was just pretend and that he was a character and that he was the invention of Shakespeare and he's not a real person. You can make a chatbot that is based on a real person. You can make one based on yourself. You can make a chatbot that has all of your materials from your class, all of your resources uploaded to it, and students can just ask direct questions of your class. I call that making a selfie. You can also make a tutor for all of your classes, such that it has and knows the exact style to ask questions in, multiple choice or free response, leading kids to more difficult, challenging questions. And that's exactly what I did. So I created several tutors. I don't know if you can see my mouse on screen here, but this was just over a weekend. I started creating these for my classes, specifically to help my students who would need access to the paid version in order to benefit from these currently, but that's not to say where they'll be in 3 months. Maybe it'll become free, I don't know. I also made 2 tutors to help other teachers. So based on the book, I wrote the Adaptable Educator series, I wrote the Teacher Coach and the Adaptable Educator. And I asked the Adaptable Educator, I said, I teach an APCSP class and I started using ChatGPT as a personal aid. What else should I expect to change? Help me to predict the future. What should I expect from this? And it started to list out all of the things that have indeed happened in my class so far this year. So it's extremely accurate in visualizing where technology trends go. And that's extremely helpful for teachers and students who maybe don't realize how this technology might change their futures. I will have a link to both of these at the end of the presentation. So if you have a paid version of GPT-4, you should be able to just copy and paste that link in and start talking to both of these chatbots, and they can help you simulate scenarios or just guide you through your class. And I recommend you just simply say what I did. Hey, this is what I teach, and this is what I'm wondering about, or this is what I'm thinking of trying. Or ask it for any suggestions, and it might give you a few scenarios to play out, which really helps doing a simulation before you try the real thing in one of your classes. One of the questions that I get most asked is, well, okay, you've created a new fun idea, unit, something for your class, and well, how do you assess that? There's no materials out there. I said, that's fine. Use chat to assess chat. I asked it, how do I assess Hamlet? And it gave me 11 ideas. One of them was meme analysis. And I was like, that's great. I could have my students create memes from Hamlet, just like I showed them in 30 seconds how to do. They could create their own to try to represent an abstract idea. That's a pretty cool form of assessment in my mind. But there's many others, and I would encourage you to simply glance through them and wonder, which one would I use? Or go ask chat yourself. Honestly, I can't say that I will come up with anything that's super useful for you right now in this moment, but you can come up with thousands, hundreds of thousands of ideas if you just ask. And in fact, I like to include this little caveat that all of my students have access to generative AI. So how should I assess them given that? And these are some great ideas for how to adapt your class, knowing that now kids have AI access outside of your rooms or maybe inside of your rooms. One of them that I've explored recently was this idea of capstone projects, interdisciplinary, summative assignments that try to put together all the knowledge from one course into one assignment. And I did a lot of ideating on that 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, so I'm not even served lunch at the transitional school either, which I like.
Something else that I did in my computer science courses is I had the students create projects, and I had them email me they uploaded the projects. I fed each of their projects into chat and said, using these custom instructions, I want you to give me a 10-question multiple choice quiz for each of my kids' projects. So this person created a tower defense game, and I created a custom quiz based on their individual project, the one that they made using AI assistance. And we can do that for every single kid in the class. So every kid makes a different project, and every kid gets a personalized assessment on the project they made. I later evolved that to swapping their quizzes with their partner, the paired programmer, so that they had to not only take their quiz on their project, but also on someone else's. So I had to test their ability to read someone else's code and read through the comments and the explanations of how each of those worked. And so this again, using my interns takes half an hour, and it's done in the background while I'm teaching the class. I just continuously feed in the next question and say, here's the next one, here's the next one, here's the next one. And it follows the custom instructions every time and gives me a perfect copyable quiz. I also use it to process assignments that I need to check for completion on. So it took about 30 seconds for me to drop a zip file in and have it look through all of their assignments for anything missing. They had a requirement to include classes in their code. And so it said, okay, based on that, here's a couple of files that didn't have these. And I went through and manually checked those files and called the kids up and said, hey, look, you didn't meet the requirements. Can you go back and try this again? So it's great for just a quick check-in, very quick. It's great for generating feedback. I don't really have the time to give personal AP feedback to every single kid's projects and assignments throughout the year. It takes a month for the AP board to do that in the spring, but it only takes about 30 seconds for it to go through each kid and generate AP style feedback, meaning A, part B, part C, and then it gives you, yep, no issues, wait, point lost here, possible point here, correct logic not implemented. I copy and paste this feedback straight to the kids almost immediately after they've turned in the assignment, and now suddenly they have personal feedback. Which they could always be trained to do themselves if you wanted to go to that length. But I feel like I have a better understanding of the prompting and the custom instructions. So I feel like I do still add a lot of value in generating their feedback this way. And they get much better feedback than I would possibly give them. And finally, how have I used in my class? Well, you can now take pictures of notes, whiteboards, whatever, and it can expand on these. So I gave this live presentation in a classroom at my school, wrote some notes on the whiteboard, It says, you've shared some images of a classroom with written on them. What can I do? And I was like, can you write some presentation notes based on these? And it did. It just kind of summed them all together, formatted them, bolded, highlighted, everything that I would want it to do to give me a nice summary. Maybe I'd post these somewhere after it created them for me. Instead of just 2 pictures of whiteboard, it actually wrote what it thought was the background to all these different things. And some of these I turned into notes for these very slides that I'm presenting today. You can do this with a textbook. You can take a picture of a textbook and say, hey, explain everything you see in this diagram to me. And the kids now have a personal explainer of pictures. You can take a picture of your artwork and say, give me ways to improve this, that I just drew this, whatever, I made a chalk drawing, and it'll walk you through things that you could do to make it better, or technique refinements. So image generation is pretty huge. Video generation and the ability to read video is coming quickly. You should expect that in the next 3 months. Especially when Google releases their next AI model. Okay, so that's how I adapt. The second question is to talk about purpose. Why are we doing all of these things? Why am I spending time focused on redesigning my classroom daily? And the reason is because I fully believe in the benefit of the outcome. So this is a testimonial from one of my students this year. And about 15 years ago, when I was first entering my school, I heard stories, which I felt were horror stories, of students with 4 hours of homework every night who were struggling with mental health, who felt like they were just drowning. And I made it my life mission to try to do something about that. With AI tools, I finally can. And I'll read this out loud since it's a little lengthy. So again, this was human generated. This was not made by the AI. The student says, a year ago, I was taking 2 AP classes and struggling with 4 hours of homework a night to keep all 7 of my grades above a 90%. Now I'm flying through my junior year with over a 4.0 GPA, an hour of homework tops, and enough free time to be mentally healthy. Honestly, if you look back 3 or so years, was there a single junior who could say that? AIs have changed my life. I use Chat or Claude every single night to check my homework, help me outline for essays, summarize text, study quickly to the point of full understanding, and help me analyze difficult problems. In my free time, which I now have, I use Bing Chat to give me unique recipes from other countries, or Chat to give me prompts to grow my poetry collection. I use Moodify to work in tandem with my Spotify to make sure that I have study playlists that never bore me. AI has been the key to the exponential growth of my intellect, not only academically, but also in my passions. With the potential that I see AI already holding, I cannot wait to see what else I can create with it or use it for. This is a student who I have taught now for 2 years. And so they benefited in the spring when I first introduced this to my classroom, and they continue to benefit in the fall when I now train them on how to prompt engineer for learning and understanding. Something that most students don't do naturally. But if you train them to, they benefit from it hugely and they're immensely grateful for it. So I ask again about purpose. What is the purpose of what we're doing? What's the purpose of what we're teaching? When I was in school, we taught calculating square roots by hand. It was something that we learned how to do. I always questioned the point of it, mostly because of step number 6, where even in the recommended steps, it says to get a more accurate estimate, use a calculator. Why are we learning this? I don't know. You can ask a math teacher, and I am a math teacher. They will always give you a reason for why they think they're teaching what they're teaching. And it usually has to do with problem solving, critical thinking, numeracy, something that relates to something else you're going to learn. But my question back to them is always, couldn't you do that a different way, teaching a different skill perhaps? Does it have to be this skill, specifically one that can be done and should be done, and everyone does do with a calculator? And you will not find a single teacher, I think, at any of your schools that still teach how to find a square root by hand without a calculator. I think we can all agree on this one. It's not something that needs to be in the curriculum. But you might find teachers who teach this by hand, because that was me about 10 years ago. I was teaching this by hand, solving 3 equations with 3 unknowns. And I'm not saying teaching the concept. I'm saying teaching the skill so that you can do it by hand on a test. It takes about 3 weeks of the class time out of the year to get through a problem this complicated to students who really struggle with breaking down the steps. And I eventually stopped teaching it. I just switched to matrices because that's what a computer uses this for, and it's used in linear algebra, and it's great for computer science. And so I teach them how to do a matrix on a calculator and how to solve it that way. And I've kind of adjusted the point of it, and now it only takes about a day or two instead of 3 weeks. And so I came to the conclusion that this didn't have the same purpose that it was originally intended to have when it was introduced to a high school curriculum. But it's still there, and most textbooks still have it. Though maybe your teachers teach it, maybe they don't. Some might have said, let's just do matrices instead. So now let's ask the question of, what's the purpose of multivariable calculus when you can do this on ChatGPT? This is a problem that I've been asking to the calculator for 9 months straight. And by the calculator, I mean ChatGPT enabled with Wolfram Alpha, which it now has embedded into it. Wolfram Alpha, the most powerful mathematical computing software in the world. This is a vector field, multivariable calculus integration using Stokes' theorem. This is 1 out of 4 pages of response that it gave me. But the end, it just wrote itself a Python script to solve the problem for it, and then used the conclusion to analyze the result and the use case, talking about the physics of a curl entering and leaving the surface. I'm not saying that we need to stop teaching multivariable calculus, but I'm certainly wondering what the point of teaching how to do this by hand would be when you can do it in your AI assistant in a matter of a few seconds. And again, I go back to skills. I'm constantly thinking skills. What skills are useful? Conceptually, I could dive into this for days, and it would probably teach me a lot about physics and understand the world. And it would teach me a lot about programming if I actually went into the details of Python code here. Somebody who's been actually doing this for a long time, longer than me and much better than me, is Dr. Jo Boaler from Stanford, self-proclaimed math evangelist. I credit her with saving my education career when I found this book on a Barnes & Noble shelf, and I read through the entire thing and bought a copy for every person in my math department. It changed my mind on teaching on math specifically that much. She brought joy for me back into learning math. She brought purpose back to learning math. And what she did is she reimagined how we could approach math in such a way that it balances problem solving, concepts, and skills in a unified way. She got a bunch of recommendations. Just a quick summary of the book is, how could you redesign your tasks and your lessons such that it makes math enjoyable in a way that humans love to do it? And also, how can you bring them to a deeper level of understanding rather than a surface level ability to perform a skill? For me, nothing speaks more to my love of lifelong learning than reigniting the joy of my students in doing math. I think that I have had more students tell me that they enjoyed math in my class in the last few years after reading this book than I had in the entire previous history of my teaching. So this has had a profound impact on me. And I think about applying these concepts now to other classes that also have a calculator for their class, right? Math has always had this, but how we choose to use it has been up to the individual teacher. Well, now history and English have calculators in the form of these language models. How are we going to adapt our classes in light of those? I think that there are great ways to do it. There are also, in my mind, future-proof skills. The skills that I don't see ever disappearing. I don't see a world where we don't still need humans to know how to do these things. These are the 5 C's of math that Jo Boaler brings up. I have them hanging in my classroom. I reference them in all of my classes, math or other, computer science. Curiosity, connecting, collaboration, creativity, and challenge. I try to design all of my assessments around them now. I try to design all of my units around these 5 main core concepts of, this is what I want you to be able to do better having gone through my class. I created a rubric, a self-assessment rubric, which I then had the students fill out, and I used ChatGPT to align to see how their approaches matched or didn't match the rubric, and I gave students feedback on their self-reflection. So this is simple, 10 points, but it tries to assess, because what is measured gets managed. So metrics matter a lot, and I put those 5 things at the front and center of my metrics. Okay, so a few things we can already ask ourselves within 1 year of the existence of ChatGPT. do we have purpose behind teaching these skills? I tend not to really teach writing basic code in my beginning coding classes. I teach reading and I teach editing, but I don't really teach the writing of basic code because AI tools generate it so much faster than a human that they want to get creative with it. And that's the most effective way I can see of doing the class. I use it for research. I made this whole presentation from scratch using it. I use it to summarize, and I no longer write emails. I just have it generate the first draft, and then I edit, and I read what it has written, and I choose from the best response if I feed it to 3 different models. So I wonder at the purpose of teaching these things, and these will continue to evolve as the models get better and better. More and more things can probably be added to this list, but I doubt that these 10 will go away. These are skills that complement artificial intelligence. The number one being digital literacy, the ability to use the technology effectively and efficiently. I spend probably 50% of my class time teaching this to my students. And these are already tech savvy kids. These are computer science kids. And I spend about half of my class teaching this. I would love to see these become the foundational pillars of what all of our classes push towards within their given subject area. But that's me personally looking ahead at what the future probably holds. So what does the future probably hold? Well, my hope is that it'll be us accompanying young people in the creation of a hope-filled future. And I hope that it'll be filled with hope-filled teachers. It's one of the reasons I wrote the book back in January. I wanted to give teachers a hope-filled vision of what their future might hold, with teachers being the main foundational pillar of that. I have to say that technology is probably going to be changing faster than you imagine already. It might force us to evolve our systems more quickly than we'd like. This is Moore's law. This is about 200 or 122 years of Moore's law, where technology doubles in power and halves in size about every 1.5 to 2 years. And this has held true for the last century. So we've had a predictive way of knowing how quickly should we adapt to technology. The problem is that this is that same curve now on a logarithmic scale, so you can compare it to what's happened in the last 10 years. And in the last 10 years, it hasn't doubled every 2 years, it has 10x'd every year. That is in the training data for AI models in terms of petaflops. This is not something our brains can comprehend. Even I, as a math teacher, don't look at this and just immediately understand what that means for my future. But it's something that we should have in the back of our minds. And that's why I have some predictions of where we might see teaching going, such that they stay educator-centric. We might have larger classes with fewer teachers. That's a possibility with lots of AI tools. We might, I will say might, we definitely will have AI tutors. We have them. As of 2 weeks ago, we have AI tutors that are good at doing a specific job. They might become more generalized, but we already have this. This might push education and learning into a model that we're just not used to seeing. We're so used to this classroom model of learning, but it might change. I don't know for sure. I did write a book that tries to predict. It's just a short story, 50 pages, that tries to vision what the future might look like. And it's called The Rise of the Teacher Coach. So that's on Amazon if you're interested. There are a few ideas of teachers in that class that we could perhaps hold on to. One is the curator and integrator, where you are more of a librarian than maybe a classical teacher at the front of the room, and you're there to help kids get resources and find tools they need. Maybe you reach out to more personal skills. You become a facilitator of human interaction. Some of you do this already. You're excellent counselors for our kids in the classroom. They come to you a lot for help. And maybe that's just what you double down on. Skills navigator. And I actually really love the typo up here that went skills, because we have to teach skills for gaining skill. Because you have to adapt, you have to update quickly, and the kids need to learn how to learn skills quickly as they are needed to. Like I said, every 3 months, a new technology that just has to be picked up in their job or wherever it is that they're forced to use that. Personally, I'm drawn more towards the mentor and coach role, That's one of my favorites. And that's just because of my background in coaching. And then, of course, and as always, I hope that we will embrace an idea that we will be lifelong learners to model what lifelong learning should look like for the kids. So that's my presentation in a nutshell. I feel obliged to put these up here. There's dual edges to this tech. It's not like perfect. I'm not 100% onboarding everything it's about, but I do try to take an optimistic look and hopefully spark that same hope and optimism in others. And this is what I would advise all schools to be doing as their next steps. It's what we've done at our school already, which is engage between students, educators, and administrators to address these challenges. And we have groups of all three at our school that are constantly discussing this. Remember continuous learning for lifelong learning, and remember to keep an adaptive mindset. If you can do that, I think you can keep up with this despite the rapid pace that it's moving at. So that's it. If you'd like to reach me, here's some contact. And also, if you'd like access to those GPTs that I mentioned earlier, the teacher coach and the adaptable educator, those are both personal tutors for you teachers to give you ideas and to walk you through this. If you've never touched a prompt before, doesn't matter. It'll just start you going. You copy those links and you paste them. It'll take you to the login and open the AI tutor from there. Okay, I think it's our time for questions now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Spencer. So we do have some time for Q&A, and we'll love to hear from the group. We'll get our screen set up here. I had mentioned at the introduction that Spencer, of course, that you were one of our speakers in our principal gathering last week, where we enjoyed being with about 80 or so principals of the JSN schools across North America. And we had some awesome conversations, really energizing, invigorating conversations around this topic, including how the history of Jesuit education fits into this, and the long tradition of Ignatian educators and Jesuits adapting to the latest technologies. Our AI, of course, being the one here in this conversation. I'm really interested in your thoughts to kick off the Q&A about. I like when you say the skills. So the idea of learning how to learn and creativity, connection, collaboration. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with the paid version of these? So thinking about the access and equity question when it comes to Jesuit education, what's your experience?
Yeah, so I have found that the paid version of GPT-4 is roughly 10 times better than the free versions that most of your kids and probably teachers are using. I am always surprised when I hear that people aren't willing to pay $20 a month for something that's 10 times better than what everybody else is out there using. But I can understand the financial setbacks that a lot of probably families face. And it's not easy to just chuck out $200 when you don't know the tool, you don't know how to use it. I will say that technology is moving at such a pace that they're making a year's progress in a month, and they're making a month's progress in a week. And this paid version is roughly 3 months ahead at all times of where everything else is. So personally, I am 100% a fan of trying to find funding to get this technology into the hands of students. If your goal is to optimize their learning and your teaching, as a teacher, I want the ability to keep creating these personal tutors for my class, because it just keeps saving me more and more time every day that I can then focus elsewhere, like giving this presentation or putting together the slides. So I think it is a major equity issue. It's one of the things that I talked about. The fourth thing on that dual edges of technology is accessibility. This brings the digital divide to a whole new level. I cannot imagine, and I've told my classes this, I said, I cannot imagine my class, not learning 10 times more than another computer science class that doesn't have access to AI tools. That's just going from nothing to the free version. If you take that again on top of it, and that testimonial that I gave was from a student who has the paid version. So they have seen this, they've seen it, the results firsthand, and they want to share how it's changed their lives. I'm not saying that you need to sign up for the chat version. Claude also has a very good and constantly updating AI product. but I haven't played around with it enough to speak to it. I've not gotten the paid model of that one because I use the paid version of ChatGPT. So I think there's going to just be that discrepancy where companies want to give the best of their products to people willing to pay for them. I am just surprised that they're charging so little, honestly. From my experience, I was willing to pay far more. And so I've actually purchased multiple accounts just because I want to always have access to it. And there are some caps even on the paid version of usage.
Thank you. Just thinking along the lines of this many issues that schools are wrestling with, I know that affordability and cost of this, of course, is one among them. What other questions do we have from those of you that we are happy are here? And please just chime in. We'll spotlight you and end with a couple questions.
I'll ask a question if nobody else has one. This is maybe not education related, but what's going on right now with Sam Altman, I believe, and that whole, it's so out of my league. I'm curious what your take is on it. If it'll affect the products, maybe.
So I'm grateful that it timed at the time when it did, when we're all going on break. Hopefully they can figure it out before school starts again. The quick nutshell is 6 members of the board on OpenAI have all been around a mission to create safe artificial general intelligence, which is supposed to be superhuman intelligence. That's been the mission of their company from the start. They have split multiple times. They first split by sending away Elon Musk. They then split by creating the team at Anthropic, so who makes Claude. That was former OpenAI. And this is the 3rd split now, where half of the board decided, actually majority decided, that the leadership was not moving in a direction that prioritized safety first and foremost, and it was actually leaning too heavily in the consumer side of products. And they decided to stage a coup effectively and knock out 2 of their leadership. So Sam Altman and I think Peter's the other one, were both exited on Friday without notice, essentially. Over the weekend, they desperately tried to come back to the company because they love what they're doing there and they believe that they're doing it correctly, whereas the other members of the board believe that they should have been doing it differently. And currently, Microsoft, who owns 49% of the company, is trying to hold negotiations to get the 2 people back into the company. Long story short, they are imploding, and many of their employees may just leave, abandon ship, and go to another AI company soon if they don't sort this out. I have hope that they will. And I will wait probably a week to see if that happens. If they do not, then my links and a lot of these tools in this presentation may quickly become outdated, and we'll have to adapt and jump on the next surfboard to ride the next wave of whatever that means. And that could mean Google's Gemini AI. That could mean Anthropic Claude's next version, Claude 3. That could mean any number of things. I am only using GPT-4 right now because they've been so far ahead of their competition. But over the summer, I was using Claude because Claude was the best at that time. And so I'm willing to jump every 3 months to something new if I need to, cancel the subscription and move on, buy another one somewhere else. I do the same with my Netflix and Hulu, so no different here.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Spencer, a question from the chat from Charlie about age and grade levels that you have experienced.
So I'm a high school teacher, so I teach 9th through 12th graders. I have mixed classes. All of my classes are 9th through 12th grader mixed, except for my CSA class is just 9th and 11th and 12th graders. I have found that all of them can be taught how to use this well when they're curious. I have not tried this with middle school. I can't speak to it, and certainly I don't see a need yet to self-train elementary school when the teachers have access to so much helpful materials on their end. I really don't see that becoming too popular. I know there's a lot of question around whether this should even be in middle school right now, and I honestly cannot speak to that without directly working with middle school environments. From a high school level, I 100% believe our kids are capable of using this to, like I say, 10x their learning. I think it's an equity issue. I think there will be kids who do and who fly, and kids who don't and who just kind of live in the past, as these other kids 1 or 2 years from now are so adept and advanced in the use of these AI tools that there's no way to compete with them. People have been saying, don't fear a computer taking your job, fear a human using one taking your job. And I say the same for students. If we talk about opportunity and equity, these are the kids who are going to get the internships and the job offers, and college is a whole other subject. But yeah.
Thank you. And I think time for one more, another from the chat from Bob. So Spencer, when I first met you, you were described as an early adapter of this within your school, and we're a ways away from that. But what other tips in particular for those listening in do you have that are just getting started, the folks that are just getting started in their setting? What would be a couple of things that you might highlight to them about where to begin?
Sure. And that's specifically why I made the 2 GPT bots that I did, is that I would say, jump in and start asking questions to the adaptable educator and the teacher coach. One of them will create simulations. So it'll ask you, hey, what would you do in this situation? And then it'll actually score you and say, oh, you did pretty good, but you could probably think about some other alternatives, solutions. So it'll score you, give you feedback, and try to get you to a point where you're jumping ahead quickly. I would say that those are 2 resources that are wonderful to start with. I would say just using it is the biggest thing. Getting people to sign up has still taken convincing. 1 year later, people still aren't willing to give it a try. 100 million active users this week on ChatGPT alone tells you that our country, our world is quickly adopting this. Even early adapters are not even really ahead of the curve anymore, because it doesn't take much to get caught up, honestly. I would say becoming skilled at prompt engineering is something I've spent the last year doing, but you don't even need that skill anymore, because now you can create a custom personal bot that does all of that, and someone else can make it for you. So you don't even need to be great at that anymore. You just need to be someone who uses it routinely to improve your creativity, to improve your ideation, to create things for you, to save you hundreds of hours in the year, to then give you more time to go study new technologies and try new things out. And it's just as I say, it's exponential. The growth is exponential. The more you put into it, the more you get out of it, and that continues to compound.
Thank you, Spencer. And in the interest of time, I'll bring us to a close here. You know, for many on the call, many listening in on this session, listening to this will be the first step, as you explained. But hearing about the work that you are doing and have been doing in your classroom at Regis Jesuit, it's inspiring. I think it's challenging. I'm certain I'm not alone in feeling like I've learned a lot from listening to you, but I also have a lot more to learn. Which is actually a great spot to be in. When we think about the idea of adaptability and purpose, when we frame this conversation in that language, I think it is something that is accessible to all educators, all roles across our schools, particularly interested in the idea of purpose and how it connects to this conversation in this constantly changing landscape. When we get back from Thanksgiving, I will share with all of our schools the results of the JSN's pop-up survey from the fall on an educator's purpose, which you will see, I think, many kind of big and small picture connections to this conversation. So please look for that next week. Thank you very much for taking the time. We're thrilled that so many of you were able to join us again on this Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Thank you very much to Spencer for all of your generosity and sharing your work with us, and wishing you and your families a very happy Thanksgiving.
You as well, Kristen. Thank you.